Meeting to consider a continued item from September 21st, 2020. This was a hearing that was held in regard to quasi-judicial case number CMP 2005, AMN 2003, SUB 2006 for BVA North Ranch LLC. The public hearing was continued to this time and date. So would the clerk call the roll, please?
Hopper.
Yes, it shows it on there.
Yeah. Allers.
Here.
McGee. McGee. Are they muted?
It shows there, but they should be able to hear us.
All good?
Here.
Colton.
Here.
We see them there. Here again.
Rob or John, can you hear us?
There we go.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay, the clerk is calling the roll.
Okay, Hopper.
Hopper? John, can you hear us?
McGee.
Yeah, I don't think they're getting that.
Hopper's not muted now.
Rob, can you hear us? John, can you hear us? Rob or John, can you hear us?
Hey Dennis, what's up?
Well, we're trying to hear you. Evidently you can't hear us.
Oh, we can't, no, I can't hear you, and I'm not saying anything, now I'm saying something.
They're not hearing us.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I hear you guys.
Mr. McDonald, function buddy.
You are muted.
Just getting a couple clicks, nothing else.
Can you hear us now, Rob?
See, this one, download fine, this one won't load.
Rob, can you hear us?
Yeah, it's already, and that one opens, yeah, but this part won't open.
Technology is great when it works.
Don't be muted, buddy.
Good job.
Does anybody have a granddaughter here or grandson? They can figure it out.
Can you hear us, Rob?
Yeah, right.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Maybe you can hear me.
No, it's the,
You can't hear me.
Hey Rob, this is John. I can hear you and only you.
Yeah, okay. We can't hear them, and they can't hear us.
yeah.
That's my understanding.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Dennis, John and I can hear each other, but we don't hear you and you don't hear us, apparently.
No, we're hearing you now, we're not you're not hearing us evidently. So we're still working.
Community room phone is on mute, I see that now, I don't know if that's been the case. I don't think it's been the case.
It wasn't, sorry. Don was checking into this still.
Yeah,
The host would like
community
to
room
unmute
needs
your
to change.
microphone. You can press *6 to unmute.
I'm on my phone, Wi-Fi here. Can you hear us now?
No, community room is still muted.
We have sent for a grandchild.
That's what's pretty
The
complex.
host would
I have
like
to
to
get a
unmute your
real-
microphone. You can press *6 to unmute. You are unmuted.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah.
We got you, good, Jeff, thanks.
They can hear us
Yeah, we
now?
got you.
Okay, awesome.
Same thing, I can hear you.
All right. Well, let's do this again, just to make sure, for the record. This is the time and place that's been properly noticed for a continued council meeting from September 21st, 2020. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Pollard,
Here.
McGee,
Here.
Alden,
Here.
Hopper,
Here.
Colton.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, we do have a quorum of council members to hear the items of business before us today. Again, this is a continued item from September 21st, known as case number CMP 2005, ANN 2003, and SUB 2006. It was continued at the end of the public testimony portion of the hearing for the specific purpose of additional corrections to the development agreement. So that is the topic that we will be discussing today. Mr. Hilty, would you please make the staff report regarding the development development agreement, and then we'll go to Mr. Peterson, and then certainly we'll let those who have signed up in opposition to ask questions or comments. And again, today is just regarding the additional language, because all the other is still on the record. This is just continued. And so what we will take testimony on is whatever changes were made to the development agreement. So Mr. Hilty, or is it Mr. Matt?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. As you mentioned, this is case number CMP 20-05 ANN, or annexation 2003 and subdivision SUB 2006. The project is known as North Ranch Business Park. Public hearing was held. Final remarks from the council was to have the plan director work with the applicant in developing the development agreement. Should be noted that the comprehensive plan identified the property as service commercial. They wish to change that to manufacturing production, was approved by council. Second portion was to zone that parcel, be annexed to the city as light industrial. So that's just a brief background of where we are at this point. This meeting was called today to complete the development agreement. I'll turn it over to Mr. Hilton.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon, Council. As far as the development agreement goes itself, hopefully you've had a chance to review it. I guess I'll kind of break it down into two components at the risk of oversimplifying, and then we can get into it, of course, at whatever level of detail you want, and hear what both, of course, the applicant has to say, as well as those who have shown up to testify. But one portion of this was to incorporate into the development agreement those things that would require development of the site in the way that it was presented. And that would be primarily orientation of buildings and the subdivision, the lot layout, the traffic flow, the truck traffic pattern, and the architectural features on the buildings themselves. The second portion of this, and I think the portion that we as staff and the applicant worked on probably primarily, was trying to make sure that there was sufficient buffering to protect the neighboring residential homeowners, including both the currently developed sites that have residential uses on them, which are on the west side and the north side, portion of the north side. And then also there's a subdivision that has been approved for most of the rest of the north side of the site as well, and so forecasting homes at that location and how to protect them. The protections themselves fall into a couple categories. One is buffering, so a landscape buffer that is 30 feet wide and with a berm 5 feet high, landscaping on top of that, as well as fencing. That I don't think is new. And then some height restrictions beyond that for 25-foot height restriction out to 100 feet and 50-foot height restriction beyond that to a distance of 150 feet for any structure that might be occupied. There's a carve out for things like antennas or silos or, you know, structures that aren't going to have people in them that might be peering down onto neighboring properties. And so you'll see this primarily, I think the changes that we negotiated were in Exhibit C4 to the development agreement. And then, of course, there was a review of uses that would be either permitted or special uses in this area. And some of the uses were excluded, many of the uses retained, but the only uses that would be permitted are the ones set forth in the development agreement itself at Exhibit C4. There was discussion last time about whether there should be any special uses on the property. And there were a list of special uses preserved. This is a large site. Some portions of the site are fairly significantly removed from residential areas and would be appropriate for other types of uses that wouldn't be appropriate adjacent to residential. And so that's really where the special use permit process was retained. That, of course, requires a public hearing and potentially further special conditions, but it allows the city to evaluate the proposed use and the potential impact on neighboring properties, and then solicit public input through the public hearing process as to how any potential adverse impacts might be mitigated. And then prohibited uses are specifically identified as well in the development agreement. Mayor, I think that concludes sort of my background on what we've been doing the last couple of weeks. I certainly stand for any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Hilty and Mr. Mapp. Any questions from council for staff? Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'll be very brief. Tom Peterson, 2775 West Navigator, Suite 220, Meridian, Idaho. Just to add on very briefly to what Mr. Hilty has
And
said.
I apologize, we do just acknowledge you have previously been sworn in.
Yes, sir, Mayor, I have been previously sworn in.
Thank you. Just need to get that on the record.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I forgot. Just very briefly to add on to that, in reference to the development agreement, those terms that we negotiated, M1 zoning, as has been mentioned before, contemplates light industrial use, evidenced by the fact that the code itself, 10-7-7, requires a landscape buffer. And what we've included in the development agreement is an enhancement to what the code requires. So the 30-foot landscape buffer plus the berm. And then in addition to that, we voluntarily agreed, because we want to be good neighbors and we want to make sure that we're not, doing something that would be, an imposition to those who are on those residential portions of the west and northwest, to limit the height within a certain, foot radius. And then I think it also provides the ultimate flexibility where the public will still have a chance to come back in for public hearing by preserving the special use mechanism, that if it's not a permitted use, the public can, when the time comes, come in and participate in what I'm sure would be rigorous debate about any particular use that's coming in. It is, I believe, really, Mr. Mapp and Mr. Hilty have done an excellent job, and we've appreciated the collaboration to balance the needs of neighbors while at the same time preserving the flexibility for this project. And I stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Any questions from council? All right, hearing none, thank you. Candace Louise?
Greetings, Mr.
Welcome.
Mayor and council, thank you for hearing me again. And again, I'm nervous, what I noticed in the changes from.
And I apologize, I need
Oh,
to have
yes,
you,
I have been sworn in.
and just give us your name and address again.
Candace Louise,
And,
415 Concourse Avenue,
thank you.
in Cobble, sorry.
Thank you, no problem. It's just following the procedure.
No,
Thank you.
that's, I need the help. In the first set of, when it was first written, it then, on C4, 21 and 22 got crossed out. And that was, oh, I've got my glasses. Can I get my glasses real quick?
Sure,
Thank
go
you.
right ahead. And I understand completely. That's the first thing I go for in the morning when I get up. Where's my
Right,
glasses?
so my glasses brought up with my mouth. Okay, 21 was crossed out, and it said, neither the lots adjacent to existing residential uses shall be oriented with the front facing such residential uses. Employee and customer parking shall be in the front of such building, and truck access, and other equipment operations shall be in the rear. The building screening such activities from the residential uses. That was crossed out, and I don't know why.
And what I'll do is, I'll just ask the applicant to make note of these questions, and then you
Okay.
can address them during the rebuttal portion.
Okay.
Is that all right? Is that okay, Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Because I don't know the answer to that, we
Oh,
weren't
okay.
involved, and so
Okay.
we'll just have him address that,
Okay,
or staff can address it during the appropriate time.
okay, and then 22 was crossed out. Buildings constructed on the lot adjacent to the residential. This is hard. Shall not exceed 50 feet or higher in height, that was crossed out, provided that buildings are constructed at least 145 feet from existing property. Okay, that's been changed, so now they can be closer. I'll just talk. They can be closer to us, they move the boundaries closer to us, so they can go higher. They keep mentioning that they're giving us an extra 10 feet in the buffer. And originally, if they kept the buffer at 20 feet, then the buildings would have been 140 feet from our fence, which would have kept the height at 25 feet. But so them giving us an extra 10 feet means that the buildings then are further away. This was originally, that they could only go 25 feet out. Now, in the second set, that border has been brought up to 100 feet. So now, anything further than 100 feet away can go 50 feet or higher. And that's from our backyard fence. I don't understand that. I don't understand, and even on the map that they gave us this last time, Building A, on the north side of Building A, it looks as though it can only be 25 feet high, but the front of that building can be 50 feet high. So their green line and red lines don't make any sense to me. The building A is about 723,000 square feet. You could put 227.5 of my houses in that building. You could put my whole lot of 6,000 feet You can put 45 lots in that one building. That's how big it is. And that's gonna be on the whole side of Boyd's Crossing and the whole north side. And so we're gonna have this huge, nasty building right across from our fence. I don't understand why it got changed to 100 feet instead of 140, originally 145, 150, but now it's 100, so they can go as high as they want. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be rude.
No, you're fine. Go right ahead, you're doing fine.
Okay, so that was, and I wanna be good neighbors by allowing for special uses that might come in later, including truck and tractor repair, truck stop, big box retail. And this is, again, to be within 150 feet from our fence. These special uses that would be allowed, outdoor storage, amusement centers, public utility yards. And I really kind of resent them saying that they want to be good neighbors, because this is definitely going to diminish my property value, especially all of us that are on that west side. 21 and 22, I think that's it. Yeah, and I don't approve of the changes that were made, and I don't think it's fair. And I think that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions for Candace? Thank you. And again, we'll either have staff or Mr. Peterson can address those questions.
Okay, thank you.
Because again, I was involved in the discussions between, as you know, that's the staff level thing. We couldn't be involved in that because it's ex parte, so that's why we're just sitting here saying they're gonna have to answer it. Because we don't have the answers. We're waiting to hear the answers along with you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Londa and Mantuso? I know I did it wrong again. Is Londa here?
Yeah, I'm here.
And I tried to remember, and I just, it must be my gray hair. And I apologize, Londa.
I'm sworn in. My name is Londa Mantuoso. I live at 419 Concourse, in Boyd's Crossing. My only, I agree with Candace, there's been a lot of talking and a lot of digging and reading, and, you know, I don't understand the changes. One of the things that I said before, and I still don't understand, is why initially this was all going to be the, commercial, and then all of a sudden it needs to be M1. I don't know. I looked at the city map, the city planning, and it shows in red all the areas that are, commercial, that the Caldwell has been looking at developing those areas, kind of as a plan. And then there's all blue on the map that shows all the M1 areas, and they're totally away. It's like this little development is not even close to any of those, and then all of a sudden there's this blue area that they want to plunk this, in this area to meet that criteria as well. That's one of my questions as well. I don't know if it was just poor planning on their part when they were developing this land and just thought, okay, well, maybe we can't get enough people unless we change, you know, the rules so that we can attract more people to rent our stuff. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like it's an enhancement to those of us who have already invested in the area, have our retirement home, in my case, in the area. I would have much rather had residential all the way around us than this, but, I realize that's not gonna happen, but that's just how I feel about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Londa? Robert, that's your husband, is he planning on coming? Okay, all right. Beverly Jaskowski?
Hi, my name is Beverly Jaskowski, and I live at 207 Concourse Avenue in Boyd's Crossing. I have not been sworn in because I actually came in here a little late. swear me in?
Sure, you can do that, you're on the assignment sheet, so.
Okay, I'm ready to write it. You swear from the testimony to provide today the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, you've been sworn in.
Thank you. So, I didn't come very prepared, didn't expect this meeting because I got the letter yesterday. So, but I wanted to come in and support all the people in Voyage Crossing. I've been here 3 times already with all the meetings that have been going on. Quite disappointed, that this council and mayor is even allowing this to happen in a residential neighborhood. It's quite upsetting that, we have invested our money, we pay taxes, and we were here first. I mean, there is no reason to build a M1 in the back of houses. I mean, that close, that high of buildings, with noise, 18-plus hours. I don't even know if that's been changed or not. 18-plus hours of operation. So that means if they start at 6 in the morning, you know, they're gonna be going to well past midnight? I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, we are coming here and we're making this effort, they keep changing stuff. First, they're gonna put a fence, then the fence was omitted the last time I was here. They said they weren't gonna put the fence because it was redundant. I'm not happy about this at all. Nobody would like this in their backyard. Nobody wants tractor trailer repairs, all tractors coming in at all times of the night, waiting to be unloaded this close to a residential area. None in my entire life, and I lived in lots of different areas in the United States, with northeast, southeast, and now in the western part, northwest part of the United States. In all my dealings, I've never dealt with a community that allows this in the backyard of residential housing. You know, certain things have been changed, and I hope that the council and the mayor will see to the fact that we are residents, we pay taxes, and this should not be behind a development that has a lot of houses that are raising families, and it's gonna have all hours of the night tractor trailers coming in and out of there. That's ridiculous. That's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you. You bet. Thank you. Any questions for Beverly? Mr. Carlson?
Beverly, how long have you been there?
Since February 2018, I signed and moved in.
Do you know who owned that property prior to this?
The back piece was owned by St. Luke's, I believe.
Okay.
It's from what I
So were
understand.
you aware that their plan was to eventually put a hospital there?
I would rather have a hospital
Okay.
than tractor trailers coming in at 18 hours of operation. I mean, that means you're not gonna only have the tractor trailers, we're gonna have cars, different shifts of people coming in and out. I had a letter and a long conversation with, Mrs. Root, she's in the Division of Planning here, asking not to even open the roads, because I think they were even considering opening some of the roads coming into our subdivision. So that means we have traffic from this supposedly M1 area of people coming in 18 hours. Now, it's bad enough that there's people that drive in and out of this area, you know, with cutting grass and the landscaping, and they throw all kind of garbage of cups and all that along the side of the road there. Now we're gonna have a manufacturing division in the back there with 18-plus hours of operation, 50-feet buildings right from our back fence, intruding on our privacy, coming in and out of there at all hours of the night. You know, we pay HOA fees. I even asked the HOA to come and represent us, and they won't do that because they feel like that's not part of, you know, of them getting involved in. You know, why do we even pay HOA fees when we have no say in anything? So I am a little bit upset about this whole entire thing. If they wanted to keep it commercial, or if there was 25-foot buildings, 150 feet from our backyard, where they put the berm, you know, the 5-foot berm with the trees and all that, eventually it's gonna take time for those trees to grow, but at least the buildings wouldn't be so astronomically tall, invasion on our privacy, noise violations, left and right of 18 hours. This is crazy. I'm sure nobody in this place would want this behind their yard. Nobody. Especially when you spent your money in investing and you're raising a family, you built a house, and you expected a quiet neighborhood. Not an industrial side of a neighborhood right behind your fence. There's, the other place on 2026 on Skyway area, Skyway Ranch, I believe it's called, there's so many empty areas there that they can build. Where I don't see why they have to build directly behind a subdivision, 50-foot buildings. That's unacceptable, totally unacceptable. And I'm sure nobody would like this if it was in their backyard. And it's, and I'm very passionate about this because I spent a lot of money in my house. Just like anybody else would be. If they stayed with commercial and it was 25 feet, 150 feet from our backyard, that would be like probably early morning till 5 o'clock, everybody's gone, and we have a restful night's sleep. Not tractor trailers pulling in, manufacturing with loud trucks, crates behind everything, cars pulling in and out. That's not acceptable, I'm sorry. And I hope that you guys will consider, us coming here. I understand progress, I understand big money and, jobs in the neighborhood, I understand all of that. But it should not be in someone's backyard. There's a lot of residents. Matter of fact, there's a lot of residents in that whole one area. I've talked to a lady that is on the side where they're actually starting to build a road right next to Hayden Homes, and she's a nurse. She said she can't even sleep at night because they're out early in the morning building that road, and she works. And so she has to come home and sleep during the day. It's just a very big disruption to a very quiet neighborhood, and that's what we paid for when we moved in there. Quiet and peace and quiet. Something has to be done with the 18-plus hours of operation in this M1. And I hope that you guys will consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mrs. Jaskowski? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is Trina Creek here? Okay. Ken McCallum? Okay. That completes all those who have previously signed up to speak. Then we'll go back to Mr. Peterson for rebuttal testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'll take them in reverse order and just kind of walk back quickly through them. I think some of this delves outside a little bit of the scope of this limited hearing, but for the record, I would just reference, Mr. Mayor and council, to the testimony that myself and Mr. Wardle and Mr. Sunderledge of Clorox Engineering has provided at the prior two hearings regarding why is the M1 going at this site? Well, it was in direct contemplation of what was planned there. It mirrors what's across the street, and it was actually, in terms of the comp plan, it's what was anticipated to go there. And again, I would just maybe, instead of regurgitate those same things, just for the record, reference back and incorporate by reference the commentary that we provided, the testimony on the record at the October 5th hearing in that regard. So that is, I think, a broad question that was raised by Ms. Beverly, and I apologize, I will mispronounce her last name, but Ms. Beverly raised a question that has been raised before, and I think that addresses it pretty squarely. Also just want to talk just briefly about, this has come up a couple times, and I understand, I think generally speaking, the frustration, but specific to BVA, I do not understand it. And there's no basis and there's no premise for it. And I will go on the record firmly as saying that anyone here or virtually can look to any of our projects in this state and this valley and elsewhere about our reputation and commitment of being neighborly. That is of paramount importance to us. And there is simply no evidence, not one shred of evidence, to suggest that we're anything but neighborly. In fact, that's why we are here. And what we're offering goes above and beyond what this city and the city's code requires. I understand generally, though, the frustration. It has been, and I don't want to spend your time or anyone's time belaboring this, but it has been several times, almost like we said one thing and we've done another, and that's just simply not true. As one example, a fence. a fence was contemplated along the neighbor's backyard. We made that better. They have back fences, and the original plan was to 10 feet from that fence, put another fence, which would create a dead zone. And if you want opportunities for vagrancy and dead space, that's the way to do it. So as a developer, we said, how can we make that better? How can we preserve and protect what they're trying to do while at the same time provide flexibility? Let's not create dead space that serves zero purpose and invites vagrancy. Let's create, what does the code require, 20 feet? Let's do 30. What berm requirements are? Let's go 5 feet on the berm. Let's put dense trees along the top. In other words, we're doing our very best to be neighborly, and respectfully, it's disingenuous to suggest otherwise. In terms of noise violations, again, I would point Mr. Mayor and council to C4, Exhibit C4, excuse me, where we talk about use modifications, and really this picks up, it's actually in paragraph 3, dimensional limitations, that walks through there, and there are elements regarding truck loading, the orientation of the buildings, the height restrictions, not in an addition to landscape buffer, what we call, what has been referenced as the north and west area buffer. That is the area that's 100 feet along the northern and western common boundary. There are additional mitigation mechanisms that are meant to minimize, if not eliminate, the very things that speculatively are being suggested will occur. So when we talk about light being at 0 lumens at the property boundary, and orientation toward the front-facing building being oriented toward the neighborhoods, truck loading being on the back, we've gone above and beyond, really, to do what has been required by the code, but in furtherance of, truly, the interests of surrounding property owners. I will briefly discuss, and I think that goes to Ms. Candace Lewis's question, and I specifically wrote this one down. It was maybe suggested that C4, that on Exhibit C4, items 21 and 22 were crossed out. I can let Mr. Hilty speak more to this as well, Mr. Mapp. Nothing was crossed out. I think what was happened is that there was a refining of the language and a formatting, and so the same elements have been picked up and captured, but there's some reorganization, and so those same things, for example, are included, and I'll turn specifically to paragraph 3 in Exhibit C4, and point, Mr. Mayor and council, to those paragraphs that talk about the very thing that the concern was, hey, that's been crossed out. It hasn't been crossed out. The north and west buffer area includes those same provisions of orientation of buildings, which I just alluded to, the truck loading mechanisms behind, and then it goes on to include a height restriction that's sort of in a tiered fashion. That's in compliance, and in fact exceeds compliance with Caldwell City Code 10-2-03, so that the area within the 100 feet of the property boundary and that northwest buff area, that within, in addition to the 30 feet of the landscaping buffer, that those buildings, as again using the code term, immediately adjacent, will not be more than 25 feet high. And then in addition to that, as not required by code, we have heard the concerns and agreed to even a larger buffer so that there are not any structures higher than 50 feet within the first 150 feet. We believe that that's compliant with and in excess of what's required by the code. There may be an argument, and it could be a good argument at some point in some hearing, not this one, as to whether or not that code should be changed. But we have complied and surpassed that. So I referenced that. And then in conclusion, I already mentioned the M1 zoning. It is contemplated at the site, and we believe that the steps that we've taken, and it has been thorough, it's been thoughtful. We have, I think it was at the great direction and leadership of Mr. Mayor and this council, that we deferred to come back to this day, that we took the time to make sure that legally and conceptually, we were gonna create a development agreement that was workable and maintainable. And so the extra time has been well spent, and I believe that we have a development agreement that clears those hurdles that have been raised, and I stand for questions at that.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. I do have one question. Mrs. Jaskowski talked about hours of operation, and I said I could not answer those questions. Is that something that you could respond to? For my purposes, I don't know the answer.
Yes, I can. So in terms of hours of operation on a site such as this, the very reason that we've tried to build in these additional mitigation mechanisms is to, just to accommodate the reality that there will be at some point, there will be some, light traffic in and out of that site. Now, again, I would point out the site plan that's been included, and it's been stated over and over, is conceptual. And so where and how often those users might be coming in, I don't know. But what I do know is that the mechanisms we have can mitigate that. But this site, and there is no hour restriction within the code, and so for that reason, we have paid painful and careful attention to how can we minimize that, recognizing that it is a big site, as Mr. Hilke alluded to, and let me get the term correct, the north and west buffer area is treated very distinctly with some of those enhanced mechanisms. But it's a big site, and could there be traffic, Mr. Mayor, coming in and out of there? Yeah. Could it be at, all hours of the night? Conceivably, but that's what this very zone contemplates.
Thank you. Further, or other questions from council for Mr. Peterson? Mr. Olgan?
When the ladies were talking about 18 hours, whatever business would be, was that 18 hours regulated just to the building that's closest to their houses, or was that the whole complex?
Well, there is no, and I'll let Mr. Hilke speak to that, but we don't, in the development agreement, we don't have any hour restriction contemplated at all.
That was mentioned, I was just curious.
Yeah.
So there's not any activity restriction anywhere in the complex?
Correct.
And then, I have one more thing, and this is minor, but it struck me in one of the ladies' testimony. Construction is extremely noisy, and already, I'm sure, noise is occurring. Is it possible to get the berm and buffer started early in the concept? If this were to go forward, something that would prevent, at least start it, so that because again, probably the noisiest thing that would occur in something like this would be the construction.
Yeah, Mr. Councilmember, I can speak directly to that. It was earlier this week that I've actually, we've released our contractors to start on the landscaping now for several reasons, and that would be one of them.
Okay.
And really for site viability and marketability and other reasons, including the construction component of that. Sort of we view the roads are going in, the berm would go in next, right? Sort of you infill from there. So yes, and I think it's important to note, and I think this actually, if I can take 30 extra seconds, the question of hours, it's an argument that many of us have thought of and many of us have made is, well, I was here first, and now we're going to have, operation going next to us. In the community that we live in, it's a great problem to have, where people are moving to Idaho, and jobs are coming to Idaho, and companies are giving incentive bonuses to their employees to come to Caldwell, Idaho. That's a good problem to have. And if we are going to stop growth, then as a community and as, business and elected officials, we have to look at that and say, is that the pathway we want forward? To provide limitations, hours of operation, that will stifle the very growth that we're trying to invite here. Instead, what we have to do is what we have done, and that is to try to minimize and to mitigate, recognizing that the argument of I was here first would, if played historically, I think keep every single one of us from being here today. So we have to embrace and figure out how do how do we embrace growth and make it so that we can mitigate? And I believe this development agreement does just that. It can't be overemphasized that the layers of mitigation that we have for that northwest area are plentiful and go beyond what the code requires.
Okay, other questions from council? Mr. Pollard?
I'm just curious, anyone from your company met with the neighbors and tried to work out their concerns?
Yeah, that's a great question. We had our neighborhood meeting, and admittedly, this whole process has been a long one, but we did have our neighborhood meeting. I have personally met now, I don't believe that I've met in person, with any of the individuals here, but I have met on-site with several individuals who had specific concerns, and in response to their phone calls that were directed to me, I personally went out on-site and continue to do so, and I'm happy to do so. I receive those calls for this project and others, and that's in my wheelhouse. I meet on-site with individuals, and I have done this for this project.
Any other questions for Mr. Peterson or staff?
Does that include us? Does that include us?
No, I'm sorry. We have to follow the hearing process, sorry. Any other questions from council? All right, thank you. Rob and John, just to make sure, did you have any questions for Mr. Peterson or staff?
Okay, I'm fine.
Mr. McGee?
Same here, Mayor. I've been listening and I don't have any further questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, again, the only other thing I have for just to make sure that Mr. Hilty, you have it as well, I have the development agreement to be added to the list of evidence. So if council does not have any further questions, from staff or, okay, we have a motion to close the public testimony portion of the hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Carlson, second by Mr. Allgood to close the public testimony portion of the hearing. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I think I heard one aye on the phone, John and Ron.
Aye, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to make sure that you're hearing us still and we're hearing you. Motion is unanimous to close the public testimony portion of the hearing. So, again, as was described at the beginning, there are three actions that the council will consider tonight. First, or today, excuse me, is case number CMP 2005, which is the comprehensive map plan amendment as requested. And the way this works, if that is approved, then we would go to the annexation, and then if that is approved, we would go to the subdivision. If at any point along the line those are not approved, then that stops the process at that point. So, again, the evidence list is for all three cases. The testimony has been for all three cases, and then you have to take each one of those decisions individually. So, I will first present the evidence list, and again, this is the same evidence list for all three cases. I have the staff report, sign-up sheets, the aerial of ANN 2003, SUB 206, CMP 20005, CC 1000, which is the PowerPoint presentation presented from Mr. Peterson, and CC 1001, which was the letter presented from Candace Louise. Sometimes my notes, after a couple of weeks, I have to go back and remember what they were. I have CC 1002, which is the letter presented from Beverly Deskowski, and then the development agreement, which was the document that was discussed today. That is the list of evidence as I have it. Is that the same you have, Mr. Hilty?
Yes.
Okay, I would ask then for council's consideration and approval of the evidence list as presented.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Allgood?
I move that we accept the evidence list as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Allgood, second by Mr. Carlson, to approve the evidence list as presented. Any discussion or changes? And just for the purposes of this, I'm just going to have the roll call on all these. That will help, if that's okay. So would the clerk call the roll, please?
Pollard?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes.
Allgood?
Yes.
Wagner? Hopper?
Yes.
Paulson?
Yes.
Thank you, the evidence list has been unanimously approved, and I think that works better with the virtual, but just get it on the record, so to make sure we have a majority. So then from there, we would go first to case CMP 2005, and I would ask for council's comprehensive plan analysis.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Carlson,
I move that we accept the comprehensive plan analysis under Roman numeral 5 listed in the staff report.
thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Carlson to approve the comprehensive plan analysis as found in the staff report under Roman numeral 5. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Allgood. Any further discussion? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Paulson?
Yes.
Pollard?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes.
Albright?
Yes.
Hopper?
Yes.
Okay, I would ask for council's findings of fact for CMP 2005.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Carlson,
the Caldwell City Council will accept the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, the evidence list, and adopted all city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating this application.
thank you. Is there a second? I have a motion by Mr. Carlson, a second by Mr. Allgood to approve the findings of fact for CMP 2005. Any further discussion? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Paulson?
Yes.
Pollard?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes.
Albright?
Yes.
Hopper?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I would ask for council's conclusions of law.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Pollard.
the city council has the authority to hear this case and recommend to the city council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements were met, the hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances.
Thank you. We have a motion for conclusions of law. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. I think the second was Mr. Allgood. And again, the conclusions are regarding KCMP 2005. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Pollard?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes.
Albright?
Yes.
Hopper? Hopper? Hopper?
Shows him unmuted. Hopper?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right,
Paulson?
Yes.
thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Order of decision for KCMP 2005.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Carlson?
based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell City Council hereby orders case number CMP 2005 or request by DDA North Branch LLC to amend the comprehensive plan from commercial and service to manufacturing and production for 115 acres on the northwest corner of Highway 2026 and Smead Parkway parcel R35276 located in Canyon County is approved with the following conditions listed in the staff report.
Thank you. Motion for approval by Mr. Carlson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Allgood. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Paulson?
Yes.
Pollard?
No.
McGee?
Yes.
Albright?
Yes.
Hopper?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries, 4-1, and so CMP 2005 is approved. And that allows us then to move to the next request, which is known as ANN 2003, which is the annexation request into the city of Caldwell. The evidence list has already been approved, so I would ask for council's comprehensive plan analysis for ANN 2003.
Mr. Mayor, there is not one listed in the staff report.
Oh, they're all in Roman numeral 5? Okay, thank you.
Do we need to do it again then?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Mr. Mayor,
Specifically.
I would move that we accept the comprehensive plan analysis, under Roman numeral 5 listed in the staff report.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Carlson to approve the comprehensive plan analysis as found in staff report under Roman numeral 5 for ANN 2003. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion by Mr. Carlson, second by Mr. Allgood. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Carlson,
Yes.
Pollard,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
Allgood,
Yes.
Hopper.
Yes.
Thank you. The comprehensive plan analysis has been approved. I would ask for council's findings of fact.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Allgood.
I'm sorry, it's not on my computer, I'm going through all this paperwork to make sure I'm in the right spot.
And you're doing it well.
I could pull it up.
You're doing fine.
The comprehensive plan map amendment, the city council accepts the outlines. I'm hoping I'm in the right spot here.
It's ANN 2, the annexation.
Yeah, I think I'm correct. Annex, okay. Call City Council accepts the comprehensive plan and component analysis as listed in section 5 of this staff report.
Okay, we've already done that, so we're at the findings of fact. Sorry, Chris.
That's what I just read. Findings of fact and decision.
If I may,
Go ahead, yeah, go ahead.
Call the city council accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence of all adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes used in evaluating the application.
Thank you. I have a motion for ANN 2003 for findings of fact. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Allgood. Any further discussion? Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Carlson,
Yes.
Pollard,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
Allgood,
Yes.
Hopper.
Yes.
Thank you. I'd ask for conclusions of law. Excuse me, the findings were approved unanimously. I apologize. Now, I would ask for conclusions of law for ANN 2003.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Pollard.
The city council has the authority to hear this case in order that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements were met, the hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. A motion by Mr. Pollard, a second by Mr. Carlson for conclusions of law regarding ANN 2003. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Pollard,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
Allgood,
Yes.
Hopper,
Yes.
Carlson.
Yes.
Thank you very much. The conclusions were approved unanimously by the council. Order of decision.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Carlson.
Based on the finding of fact and conclusions of law, the Caldwell City Council hereby orders case number CMP 2005,
This
request
is
by...
ANN.
Oh, wow, okay. ANN 2005, a request by DEA North Ranch LLC to amend, I got this. I'm in the wrong spot. No, I got it. Okay, I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Based on the findings, facts, and conclusions of law, the Caldwell City Council hereby orders case number ANN 2003, project named North Ranch Business Park, to annex approximately 25 plus, more or less, acres of frontage on Highway 2026 to propose as a C3 service community zone, and 90 more or less acres is requested to be zoned in one light industrial on a parcel located on the northwest corner of Highway 2026 and Sweet Parkway, parcel R35276, in accordance with Exhibit A3, attached hereby is approved.
Thank you. We have a motion for approval of ANN 2003. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Mr. Allgood. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Carlson,
Yes.
McGee,
Yes.
Pollard,
No.
Hopper,
Yes.
and Carlson.
Yes.
All good. All good.
Allgood, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Allgood.
Okay, I believe the motion is approved 4-1, and so the motion for annexation has been approved by the Caldwell City Council. That then moves us to SUB 2006, which is the preliminary plat, for the same request of development. Again, the evidence list has already been approved. I would ask for council's comprehensive plan analysis, which again noted by the planning and zoning director was included in Roman numeral 5 for all three requests.
We're doing the, what?
Comprehensive plan analysis.
Comprehensive plan. Mr. Mayor, I would, move that we accept comprehensive plan analysis under Roman numeral 5 of the staff report.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Carlson for SUB 2006 to approve the comprehensive plan analysis as outlined in the staff report under Roman numeral 5. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Allgood. Any further discussion? Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Carlson?
Yes.
Pollard?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes.
Alden?
Yes.
Hopper?
Yes.
Okay, I would ask for council's findings of fact for SUB 2006.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Carlson?
the Caldwell City Council accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and evidence that all adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Carlson, second by Mr. Allgood for findings of fact regarding SUB 2006. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Carlson?
Yes.
Pollard?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes.
Alden?
Yes.
Hopper?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. The findings of fact have been approved. Conclusions of law.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Pollard?
the Caldwell City Council has the authority to hear this case in order to be approved or denied. Public notice requirements were met, the hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Pollard, a second by Mr. Carlson regarding conclusions of law for SUB 2006. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Pollard?
Yes.
McGee? McGee?
Yes.
Alden?
Yes.
Hopper?
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously. I would ask for council's order of decision.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Carlson?
based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law, the Caldwell City Council hereby orders case number SUB 2006, a request for the consisting of 11 commercial lots and 22 light industrial lots on parcel R35276, this 116-acre parcel located on the northwest corner of Highway 2026 and Sweet Parkway in Caldwell, Idaho, is approved with the conditions listed in the staff report.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Carlson for approval of SUB 2006 with conditions as outlined in the staff report. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Allgood. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Carlson?
Yes.
Pollard?
Yes.
McGee?
Yes.
Alden?
Yes.
Wagner? Hopper?
Yes.
Okay, motion carried unanimously for approval of SUB 2006. Now, just for comment for those in the audience, and again for those that may be on virtually, any decision that the council makes is certainly subject to appeal. I knew that, I'd find the word. So there is a 28-day appeal period that starts after the orders of decision are approved. But because of, again, the rules of the quasi-judicial public hearing, that means during that 28-day time period, the council members cannot be contacted, just the same as we explained before, but certainly staff members can be contacted. I believe Mr. Peterson said he would be available to talk to him, and he would be happy to meet with you. And so if you contact council members or myself for not being rude, we'll just have to say, sorry, I can't talk to you until after the 28 days. I think that those are the rules of law that we have to hold a hearing under, so please understand that. And so the order of decision will be on the city council agenda for November 2nd. It's just formality. The decisions have already been made, but it has to be in writing, so they will approve it in writing. and then that starts the 28-day time period from that time, so. With that, Mr. Schulte, did I leave anything out as far as explaining the process? Okay, is there a motion then to close this public hearing? So moved. Have a motion by Mr. Pollard, second by Mr. Carlson to close this public hearing. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I believe the motion is unanimous. There's Mr. McGee, I didn't hear you. That is the only item on the agenda for today, so if there's no further action, I would accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
The motion by Mr. Allgood, second by Mr. Carlson. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? You're here by yourself.